Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Poplawski, and today I'm going to be talking about cultural group selection, specifically through the perspective or lens of religion as well as European history. So today I'm going to first be talking about what cultural group selection is, as well as how it relates to religion and European history. Then I'm going to be going through a bunch of significant events in European history and applying cultural group selection to those events. I'm going to cap it off at the very end, and then lastly is, of course, the bibliography, all the stuff that I used in order to make this presentation. I am going to posting the actual presentation as well as this video on Blackboard, so you guys can look at it for yourself and visit all the sites and whatever you want to do just to fact check. So let's just get started. So what is cultural group selection? In The Ape That Understood the Universe by Steve Stuart Williams, cultural group selection is basically the idea that suggests that group beneficial memes, which are basically stuff that can spread easily, last longer, and are passed down to future generations. And basically, a lot of things can be affected, like a lot of things are relate to cultural group selection, but one of the most potent and influential throughout world history is religion. And I would argue that cultural group selection helped kind of cement the importance status that religion has. So let's just start going through the events. So the first one is Constantine's conversion to Christianity. Constantine was a Roman emperor, and however, at the time, Rome, their official religion was paganism. They believed in the whole pantheon of gods like Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Neptune, etc. Christians were a very large minority, but they were persecuted. However, Constantine, he helped issue what was called the Edict of Milan, which basically granted religious tolerance for all religions throughout the empire. And before Constantine died, he actually converted to Christianity. Now, how does this tie to cultural group selection? Because there were so many Christians persecuted within the Roman Empire, society was obviously not doing well. There was a lot of strife. There was a lot of fear. Issuing the Edict of Milan helped ease the tensions and would help to basically prolong the longevity of the Roman Empire. The next important event is the First Crusade. Essentially, an Islamic Seljuk Turks, they took over part of Christian territory in the Middle East. The Pope in Rome, he calls for a crusade, basically telling everyone to rally up and, basically wipe out the Islamics, wipe them out of the area and reclaim the Holy Land. That was basically the big mantra. And so people throughout all of Europe, they all band together, they went to the Middle East and actually took over a lot of that land and even turned some of them into nation states. They took over very key Christian lands like Antioch and Jerusalem. And obviously now we know today that, we should be tolerant of other religions, but obviously back then that was no longer the case. That was not the case. Back then it was very absolute. You were either with us or against us, and thus the Christians viewed the Muslims as the enemy and vice versa. So although it's rooted in very intolerant logic, the way this ties into cultural group selection is that basically the crusade halted the Islamic expansion, and that would allow Christianity to keep being passed down to future generations. Basically, the crusade helped prolong the life of Christianity. However, a couple centuries later, a very historic city called Constantinople it's destroyed, besieged, and conquered by once again Islamic Turks. However, the Europeans, they didn't really care that much, and that's because earlier the Pope in Rome, as we all know, the Pope was, the leader of the Catholic Church. He basically branded the people of Constantinople as outsiders and heretics. And so the Europeans, they kind of just let it fall. They didn't go to their aid to rescue them. And the reason that happened is because at this point, Constantinople and everyone inhabited were seen as the outsider. If you help them, then it's going to endanger or jeopardize the spread of the good Christian ideals. And basically its fall was seen as beneficial for basically the current Christian, basically social climate of Europe. So these two events happened over a long period of time, but they're interrelated. The first is the Reconquista. This is when a bunch of people from Europe, rather than taking land from the Middle East, they drove out the Muslims from Spain and Portugal and basically created Christian kingdoms there. However, Spain, in order to basically cement the Christian dominance in the land, they did what was called the Inquisition, in which they would basically purge anyone that was not a Christian, so Muslims, Jews, and then later Protestant Christians, basically out of the idea that the purge, the Inquisition, was necessary in order to basically, it was beneficial for the nation's survival as well as for the continuation of, the good Christian ideals. Another bloody conflict was the 30 Years' War. It started off as the Protestant Reformation when a bunch of Europeans, they broke off from the Catholic Church and they basically adopted different denominations of Christianity. Europe for the first time was not united in terms of Christendom. And this unrest basically climaxed into a war between the Catholics and the Protestants, which is called the 30 Years' War. And the reason why this ties into cultural group selection is because now you have two very large groups who believe that their religion is the good religion, the best religion. And they want to make sure that religion gets spread down to future generations, even if it means destroying or wiping out the rival religion. The last event I'm going to be talking about is the Holocaust. I'm not going to go very deep because I know it's a very sensitive subject. As we all generally know, the Nazi Party in Germany, they wanted to create a utopian empire populated with only what they called the ideal race, which were the Aryans. And they believed that in order to achieve that, they would have to exterminate a bunch of lesser beings, and most potently the Jews. And like I said before, this, of course, doing that, of course, is abhorrent. It's just disgusting. But to the Nazis, the extermination, that was necessary in order to what they thought as cleansing Europe and basically ensuring the continuation of their ideals, their anti-Semitic ideals, their nationalistic, their fascist ideals, etc. So, what to take away from all this? So basically, cultural group selection is, of course, it's natural, it's innate, but it's seen here that although something may be beneficial, it does not mean that it is good in the moralistic sense. In fact, people who believe that are operating under what's called the naturalistic fallacy. Also, stuff like science, and for example, cultural group selection theory. This is a part of science that can be warped in order to promote an agenda. And although I do not talk about it much, that has happened in the past. People have used science to basically promote racist and sexist agendas. It is brought up in the Ape That Understood the Universe. And so, yeah, and basically for those who are just worried about the current climate in Europe, because I know all those events, or most of them, are just all very violent, they're very evil, they're very unsettling to listen to. I am glad to say Europe is much better today than it was less than 100 years ago, which is great. It's fantastic. Obviously, not everything's perfect, but it is a great step forward it was back then. So I just wanted to include that just to kind of ease your minds, just to end it off. So I hope you liked my presentation. I hope you found it interesting or enjoyable. I love European history, so I wanted to find an opportunity to integrate it into this unit. And so, yeah, I hope you guys have a good time. Like I said, I'm going to post this presentation as well as this video on the Blackboard, so you can go and look at all my sources if you want, in case you want to fact check and, hold me liable to anything. So have a good day, everyone.